Hello, and welcome to the 2007 K-12 Online Conference. My name is Warlick, and I'm going to be your pre-conference keynote speaker. Now, you may know me from a blog that I write called 2 Cents Worth, or a podcast that I produce called Connect Learning. You may visit one of my websites, or you may have seen me present at a state conference or a regional conference. But right now I'm at home. I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina, on the east coast of North America, on the third planet of the solar system, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where I am. It doesn't matter when I am. In fact, when I was writing the script for this part of the presentation, I was at 33,000 feet, somewhere between central North Carolina and northern Texas. But that doesn't matter either, because the borders are gone. The borders have disappeared. The borders have changed. The borders that the walls, the classrooms, the textbooks, the borders that define education as we know it have turned soft, or they've turned transparent, or they've gone away altogether. I don't know where you are as you're watching this. I don't know when you are as you're watching this. I don't know what you're looking at as you're watching this. But that's the nature of the information environment that we find ourselves teaching and learning in. You're going to be learning over the next few weeks in a conference called the K-12 Online Conference. And this conference is a perfect model for learning in this environment. It may be a bit of an exaggerated model, but you're going to be learning, but you're not going to be learning from a teacher standing in front of the classroom. You're not going to be learning from a textbook that was written 5 years ago. You're going to be learning from people just like you, who are presenting, in some cases, from their very classrooms or from their very offices. And they're going to be teaching you what they have learned from other professionals. Because in the 21st century, we learn by teaching each other. We learn by sharing our knowledge, our experience, what we've discovered, what we've learned. So I hope you enjoy this presentation and the rest of the 2007 K-12 Online Conference. Last year, we spent a little bit of time at the Raleigh train station because I wanted to talk about how much of education, as we've known it in my time, was about taking a lot of students, having a common outcome, a common destination for them, and being able to load them up on the train of the classroom of the first grade, the second grade car, the third grade car, the fourth grade car, and send them all down one track to this common destination. And this still makes a certain amount of sense to education, because there are certainly things that all of us need to learn. There are certainly things that we all need to understand in order to have a common context within which to work together to accomplish goals, both individual goals and common goals. But in last year's presentation, I talked about side trips, how really the part of education, the part of learning that probably ought to be what defines the education experience for our students is those side trips, not what everybody was learning that was exactly the same on the train, going down the track, going north or whatever, but that really what it is that defines my education experience, is what I learned that was different, was the side trips that I took. Now, this year's conference, at least at the time that I was invited to do this presentation, was about working in new boundaries, working in new borders. Okay, so we're not at the train station now. We are at the Raleigh-Durham Airport. Let me just take you around here so you can see. That's the landing strip out there. I don't know if you can see it. I have a hard time seeing the screen there, but we just go all the way around, and there's the observation deck. I was going to go up there, but there's a bunch of people up there, and I feel kind of uncomfortable doing this in front of a bunch of people. So we're going to come back around where I think the light is better, and and just say that when I first read about the 2007 conference, what I thought about when they were talking about boundaries was, heck, with all this technology that we have, with the networks, the internet, the computer, there are no boundaries anymore. The walls are invisible. The walls are coming down. We're able to put kids in contact with the world that they're learning about. And this is great. This is what I've been talking about for years. And, this is wonderful. But the thing is, it's not all that terribly wonderful for all of the boundaries to go away. I've been to classrooms where their job, they are working on getting rid of the boundaries, doing away with the textbooks, with the schedules, with the practically doing away with the walls and the desks in a straight row, doing away with all that. And what I see is teachers and students looking for new boundaries, looking for new borders, looking for new pavement upon which to get traction, to move forward. If there's no borders, if there's no boundaries, if there's no hard places at all, where do you get your traction to move forward? I'm struggling with it right now. I have no boundary out there. All I have is this camera, and I'm accustomed to working off of people. I'm accustomed to having an audience out there and being able to see their eyes and their smiles or their frowns or their the furrows in their forehead, furrows in their forehead. To get something to push off of and to pull toward, and there's no boundary out there, and I'm having trouble with that. And I think trying to educate kids, educate a generation without boundaries is not going to work, and I don't think we're going to let that happen. So our task is to find the new boundaries, or perhaps even to invent the boundaries. One reason why I came here to the airport is, the airplane doesn't go down a track. They have their trails, their paths, their flights. Here's one coming down. He's coming down the track, and he's going to go all the way out there to the end, and he's going to take off, and he's going to head up into the air, and he's going to have a path that he goes down. But it's different from the rail. It's different from the track that is taking you along the same line. There's a science fiction story, a science fiction book written by a North Carolina author, Orson Scott Card, called Ender's Game. And some of you have probably read this book before. And it takes place in not too distant a future where the Earth has been attacked twice by an alien species. So the Earth has built an armada of spaceships and sent it to the star system of this alien race called the Buggers. But we didn't have any admirals. We didn't have people who were trained to fight that kind of war. So the plot of the book is that they have gone and they have found children who have exhibited natural abilities of strategy and certain moral characteristics that would make them a good admiral, a good commander for an army that is attacking another race. And one of these kids is Ender Wiggin, and Ender Wiggin is younger than a lot of the other kids, and regardless of certain moral characteristics that he has, he doesn't want to hurt people. He does have a brilliance about resourcefully defeating an enemy, and they practice their wars in and I can't remember what it's called, but they're in a space station. The battle school is in a space station that is orbiting the Earth, and there is a place in that space station where there's no gravity. So that's where the battles take place, is in this place of no gravity, so that when the soldiers, when these boys go out in their suits, they're going out into a weightlessness. So the only thing that they have to push off of, the only thing that they have for traction is the walls. And sometimes there are different boundaries and shields and things put up, and it's different for each battle, so they can push and they can hide off of that. But Ender his army has exceeded so well that they're actually sending his army into rooms where the defending army, the opposing army, is already there, and they're already positioned, and that's how much they were stacking the deck against Ender Wiggins' army. So there's a point where they're about to do battle. There's no boundaries out there. There's a whole army out there already. There's no shields. There's nothing. There's nothing to get traction off of. So what Ender does, now the way the battle works is they have these guns, and the guns are aimed at the suits of the soldiers in the opposing army, and when your suit gets hit by this ray or this whatever, then the suit locks up. So your goal is to incapacitate the opposing army by locking up their suits so that people can't move around anymore. So what Ender does is he lines up his soldiers right before they go through the door. He lines up groups of soldiers, 3 of them at a time, and he shoots them with the gun. So their suits lock up, but they've got their arms locked, so that as they're locked up, they become shields. And then another soldier is then placed behind the shield, so that when they go out, they have made their own shields. They've made their own hard places. They've made their own pavement upon which to get traction to do battle against the opposing army. And I think, in a sense, not that this is a war, it's or there's an opposing group or whatever, but what strikes me about that story is that Ender Wiggin resourcefully creates his own pavement to his own boundaries. And there it goes. Ender Wiggin has resourcefully created his own boundaries through which to find traction to go where he and his army need to go. And I think that's kind of the place that we're at right now in education, or the place that we're approaching, where many of the traditional boundaries, the walls, the textbooks, the desks in a straight row, these borders, these boundaries are going away. And we're in a position right now where we need to be resourcefully inventing, creating, along with our students, creating new boundaries, new places through which we can get traction to move forward, to move in whatever direction we need to move in. And
taxi straight in, Charlie Foxtrot, left turn, Charlie Juliet, the right. Second right. Runway direct,
I thought we would take a little break here, have some coffee on the users of Class Blogmeister, who donate regularly to my Starbucks card, fueling my writing. I'm here at my favorite office right now, other than the one in the basement of my home, and it's another Starbucks. We like Raleigh is probably the only city in the world that will have 3 Starbucks within walking distance of one spot, with the possible exception of Chicago, New York, San Francisco, Seattle, Edinburgh, London, Paris. But it's within walking distance of the house. So this is where I do a lot of my writing, thanks to Class Blogmeister teachers. And I was just thinking, in preparation for this this presentation, this keynote, about when I was young. When I was very young, before I went to school. I used to enjoy watching my father get ready for work. And he would shave, and he would put on his white shirt, always a white shirt, never a colored shirt. he would put on his tie, which was a daily ritual that I used to watch, where he puts the tie around him and he flips it around and he slides it through, and a few tugs. It's a ritual where he comes up with this signature tie that he's wearing, and then he would go off to work. Now my dad taught school for about 5 years before he ended up going into industry, because he just simply couldn't afford to remain in the classroom. My grandfather had the same experience. He wanted to be a teacher, and he taught for a number of years before ending out having to go find jobs elsewhere. And of course World War I came along, and he was also involved in World War II and all that sort of thing. But this is not about family history. This is about my experience in watching my dad prepare himself for work. And what I was watching basically was myself. When I looked at my father and I watched him preparing for work, and in later years when I would go and pick him up at the office, he worked for about 30 years for a trucking firm there in the little mill town that I grew up in. He was the manager of the accounting department. So he was in charge of a group of workers, clerks. I'm not sure what you would call them, but they worked at desks in straight rows, performing repetitive tasks with adding machines. I mean, this was before desktop computers. This was his job, and as I would go and pick him up after work, once I was up in high school and all, I was looking at my future. When I graduated from college and I entered the classroom as a classroom teacher, and this was a couple of years before the advent of the TRS-80 desktop computer and the Apple II and the Apple II Plus. As I entered the classroom, I had no reason to believe that my job as a teacher would ever change one bit, or in any significant way. I felt well prepared for the rest of my work experience. That's why I went to school, was to be prepared for my future. Of course, it's changed. I do a lot of my work at Starbucks. This morning I'm working here in my office in the basement of my home in Raleigh, North Carolina. I'll spin around and give you a look. There's the backyard, patio, my bookcase, and back to where I work. Now, typically I get up about somewhere between 4 and 4:30 in the morning. And on this particular morning, I wrote this down, and I put it somewhere. I wrote this down. From about 4:30 this morning, I have remixed the last video podcast and adding in the outtakes, and this is for TeacherTube. I have also processed 3 days worth of emails. That's how far behind I can get from time to time. I've also posted a blog entry, which it appears. And I'm going to have a meeting in less than an hour, with the director of the North Carolina Educational Technology Conference, talking about the upcoming conference. And oh, by the way, I've also downloaded a number of 80s prog rock videos, which I will be watching while I'm on the plane next week. Now, next week, I'm going to spend over half of the week working in education conferences in Pennsylvania and Maryland. So, it's about half and half, working here, working other places around town where I get away, and much of the time I'm out on the road. And the thing is, it would have been impossible for me, as I was watching my father prepare himself for his daily work, going through his ritual, it would have been impossible for me to predict that this is how I would make a living. I run a website that gets over 500,000 page views a day. The Google Ads proceeds pay for the web server. I've written 3 books, the proceeds of which have paid for my daughter's college, with hopes of they're also paying for my son's college. It would have been impossible to predict this. And my point is this: I was probably the last generation who could look at his father and believe that he was seeing his own future. For these kids, they know that things are changing so fast. that they really don't know how they're going to be making a living in the future. And I would suggest, I don't know that this is true, and this may be as ridiculous as it sounds, but I would suggest that perhaps how I'm making a living, what I'm doing, may be a better model for our students' future, for how they'll be making a living, than what you do. But the idea of freelance workers, free agent workers, free agent educators, free agent accountants, free agent writers, free agent, machine shop setup people. I mean, I know that this takes place. And I think it's important for us to understand that for the first time in history, we are preparing our children for a future that we cannot clearly describe. And this has profound implications on education, on what and how we teach. Just over there through those woods is where my children's swing set used to be. My wife and I took it down, a couple of months ago, and it was hard for us, but it would have been much harder for our children. In fact, we had to wait for both of them to go off to college before we would dare to take that down. If my son had been here when I went out there with my tools to start disassembling it, he would have run out and chained himself to the posts of that swing set, because it meant so much to them. My kids were kids. They weren't little, digital robots who were plugged in all the time. They were kids. They played like any other kid. They played a whole lot like I did. But they were different. They had, my children had a dramatically different childhood than I did. And it's popular to compare my generation to our students' generation by calling them digital natives and us digital immigrants. Of course, this phrase came from a very important paper that was written by Mark Prensky back in 2001, where he used this distinction to convince us that the children who are in our classrooms are not the students we think that we're teaching. And this is an important thing for us to understand. But in watching my own children as they have grown up, I've come to realize that they are not natives in a land that is in any way stable. In fact, by watching my children grow up, I have come to realize that their journey, literally continues. They didn't always have IM, Dance Dance Revolution, Halo, network video game systems, laptops, Wi-Fi, MySpace, Facebook, text messaging, or even mobile phones. These are things that they didn't always have. They have grown into these technologies. They have continued. Like us, our job, as digital immigrants is not to say, use it as an excuse and say, oh, I can't learn this because my kids are natives and I'm an immigrant and I'll never be able to learn this. Our job is to not use it as an excuse, but it is to get rid of our accent. Our accent as an immigrant. And the thing is, our kids have continued to develop their accents. Because the technologies have continued to grow, and they have done this by paying attention. They have done this by celebrating change. They've done this by adapting to the change. Watch this little video.
What do you talk? What do you talk? What do you talk? What do you talk? What do you talk?
Where do you get it?
What do you talk? What do you talk? What do you talk?
Where do you get it? You can talk, you can bigger, you can talk, you can bigger, you can talk, bigger, bigger, bigger. You can talk all you wanna, but it's different than it was.
No, it ain't, but you gotta know the territory. 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 You gotta know the territory.
Well, that's just a portion of a video that my son produced when he was a junior in high school. And he produced it by mixing audio from a DVD and hats from around the house and his own acting in order to make this little video. And I showed this video to a number of my audiences, and I show it in order to say I didn't teach him how to do this. And I know his teachers at his high school, and I know they didn't teach him how to do this. And my question is, where did my son learn how to mix this content together in order to make this video? He learned because he's connected. He learned because he's part of a network. He's part of a community. He learned because he knows how to find people who can help him learn what he needs to know to do what he wants to do. You know, we talk about the digital divide, but I think we do not yet understand how vast that digital divide is. I mean, it's not just a matter of these people over here having access to the technology and these people not having access to the technology, or even that these people have access to the digital content and these people don't. I think the real digital divide is the fact that these people over here are part of a network. They're part of a community, and these people are not. These people are learning, these students, these kids are learning what a community of people can accomplish when they collaborate together. And there's power in that community. And these people over here are alone, and there is no power there. And this is an enormous problem for us. In my country, it is a national problem, and our future depends on solving that problem. Because these kids over here, well, let's face it, these kids over here are not human. They have powers that would have seemed magical alien powers to me when I was growing up. You know, they can hear through walls. They can see through walls. They walk around with their mobile phones, you know, and they're constantly connected to people, all, you know, hundreds of miles away. When we took my son off to college, you know, we got him moved into his room in a half an hour. He had another day and a half to kill. So we spent a day and a half, you know, the three of us wandering around town. But the whole time that we were together, he was constantly pulling his phone out of his pocket. He would open it, he would read it. Most of the time he would close it again and he would put it back into his pocket. Sometimes he would type in a message, you know, with one thumb, you know, and he would close it back up. And I finally asked him what was going on. And he described this conversation that he was having with his friends. Now these were his high school friends, his high school buddies, you know, who are now in Illinois and Massachusetts and New York and all over North Carolina. You see, he never said goodbye to his high school friends. When I went off to college, I said goodbye to my friends, and many of them I never saw again. But he never said goodbye because he carries his friends with him. He carries that conversation with him. He's got these invisible alien tentacles that reach through walls to connect to his friends. And he's got his video games, and his video game is hooked up to the internet. And much of the time, he's not even playing the game. He's like playing in a sandbox where he and his friends are building things in the game, or they're making a movie in the game, using the game system as a movie set, or even when they're playing the game. They're working together on a team, in a guild, with people all over the world to build a castle, to defeat an alien army. They're learning to collaborate. They've got these tentacles that are reaching through walls in order to connect to other people. And the same with their computers. With their computers, they're collaborating with people through their social networks, through their communication, their social networks. And these tentacles that I'm talking about, we can't see them. I mean, we can't see them. They can't see them. They're invisible. But it is a part of who they are. And the problem is that when they enter our classrooms, we chop those tentacles off. Because we want our children to be the students we want to teach, rather than teaching the children that they are. And this is an insult to our children. I just had a bit of a scare. I wanted to use as a prop an old encyclopedia, and I knew we had some encyclopedias somewhere here around the house, but I couldn't find them. I looked all over the place. I could not find these encyclopedias. I finally went to Brenda, and of course she knew where they were. She showed me to a bookcase that I hadn't looked at, and sure enough, there they were. And here is the first volume of Grolier's Encyclopedia, 1961. This is the information landscape that I grew up in, where information was hard. Information could stand up on a bookcase. You could store it. You could protect it. The information did not change. This information has been the same since 1961. This information was produced at great expense, so you wanted it to last a long time. Of course, information has changed. The nature of information has changed. What we look at to view the information has changed. What it looks like, how you find it, where you go to find it, what you can do with the information, how we communicate the information. All these things have changed. Now, nothing's really gone away. Nothing's really changed except that how we use the information, how we look at the information, how it flows. You know, how it moves from place to place and what we can do with that information has changed. Information has become increasingly networked, digital, overwhelming, participatory, reader-directed. I mean, when information comes to us from networks, it often comes directly from the author of the information without the benefit of an editor or a publisher or a librarian or any of the traditional gatekeepers. So it's important that at the same time that we teach kids how to read, that there are other skills that are just as critical to being literate in this new information landscape, such as being able to find the information that's going to be appropriate to what you're trying to achieve, and being able to evaluate the information to determine its value, being able to organize the information into personal digital libraries. And what happens to arithmetic? I mean, certainly kids have got to learn how to add, subtract, and count and measure, and every child must understand the language of numbers. But what happens when today all information is made out of numbers? Images, sound, video, text, animation, it's all made out of numbers today, ones and zeros. So what happens to arithmetic when numbers now apply to the full range of content, when information is overwhelming, when we're overwhelmed with information and we're having to decide what information we're going to use? You know, we're trying to decide what information has competed for our attention. We have to understand that being literate, being able to use information to accomplish goals, involves not just being able to write a coherent paragraph, but can you produce an information product, a message that will successfully compete for the attention. In the information age, information must compete for attention in exactly the same way that products on a store shelf competed for attention in the industrial age. So information, the nature of information has changed, and as a result, our notions of what it is to be literate must also change. Well, we're here at the Greenway, waiting on the little ladies. Nobody's coming that way, nobody's coming that way. Before I talk a little bit more about information, I did want to mention one thing. That is, one of the questions that I ask myself each day is, where do I want to be 10 years from now? And I'm not talking about where do I want to be in my career, or where do I want to be geographically. Do I want us to be living here in Raleigh or Asheville or whatever? It is, where do I want to be in terms of how strong am I, how agile am I, how able am I to do the things that I want to do? How healthy am I going to be 10 years from now? And I try to ask myself that question every day. And in asking that question, I think about what can I do today? How many quarts of water do I need to drink today? How many miles should I walk today? I try. Here comes somebody who's taking care of his health. And I ask myself, how many quarts of water am I going to drink today? How many miles am I going to walk today? I try every morning that I'm at home. I try to ride my bicycle 14 miles every morning. I try to walk 4 miles in the afternoon, mostly along the Greenway here. I inject this because I think that it's very, very important that as we talk about the nature of information, as we talk about technologies, as we talk about this incredibly connected world, we have to talk about the fact that we still need human bodies to carry us from place to place. Now we have to take care of those human bodies, and this is something that we should be talking more about, I believe. But another aspect, and the main reason that I came here for this particular part of the how much information is independent of time and space. I mean, I came here on the Greenway. There's not an electrical outlet within 100 yards. There's no Wi-Fi. In fact, I can just see if there's any Wi-Fi here. Rattle, 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 rattle.
You guys ran in the rain last Thursday?
More,
Awesome.
more and more and more and more. And there's no Wi-Fi here either. How about that? So I'm disconnected, yet I'm talking to you, and you're someplace in the world. You're someplace, I don't know where you are, I don't know when you are, I don't know who you're with, I don't know what you're looking at, but you're able to see me even though I'm so disconnected, at this particular moment. In fact, right now I'm standing here at this camera, and I can, this far from the camera, this far from and I can be this far from the camera. In fact, I can even take you to places that we haven't yet been. You see, today we can shape and reshape information in ways that can create brand new learning experiences. We can enable teachers to teach more effectively from a new information environment. We can make our students remixers of content, provoking more effective learning. And the thing is, it is so much within the grasp of those of us who are paying attention. It may appear that I've been rambling a bit over the last 30 minutes, and the truth be told, I probably have to some degree. As I said early on, I'm not real comfortable with this format. I'm not comfortable with not having people out there to react to what I have to say. But that said, there is some order to what I've been expressing. And before I reveal that order to you, I'd like to suggest something about classrooms. And I want to think back to the classrooms that I attended back in the 50s and 60s, where the teacher stood up in front of the class and taught, and the students sat down low in the class and learned. Where you wanted the teacher up high, you wanted the students down low. If you went to libraries back then, they had these great big tall bookcases. Okay, and sometimes to get to the books up at the top of the bookcase, there were these little rolly things that you would roll over and step up on to reach the book that you were looking for. Think about The World is Flat by Thomas Friedman, where we had a hilly world that is in the process of flattening. Think of the classroom as a hilly place, where you wanted the skills, the content, the curriculum up high. You wanted the learners down low, and this was good because you could rely on gravity to drive curriculum. But consider that in my country, 57% of teenagers have produced original digital content, and they've published it on the internet, and many of them have engaged in conversations with their audiences. How many of their teachers are published authors? How many of their teachers are published musicians or composers? How many of their teachers are published filmmakers? From the perspective of their information experience, our children, many of our children, are more literate than their teachers. Our classrooms are flat. How do we drive learning in a flat classroom? How do we drive curriculum when we can no longer rely on gravity? There are three brand new conditions that exist, that are converging on our classrooms. And we've tried to ignore them, and we've tried to contain them, and to even block them out. But I think that the best thing that we can do is to realize that these three converging conditions can actually become new boundaries off of which we can gain traction. They are the fact that we're preparing a generation of students who are info savvy, and they are tech savvy, and they know how to play the information. They don't know how to work the information. They need us to help them learn how to work the information. But we have to understand that these kids who are coming to us from an information experience that is far richer and far deeper and far more personal than anything that we have been able to duplicate in the classroom. I think it's important for us to understand that there is energy in that this experience that they have generates energy. And if we're trying to help kids learn without the benefit of gravity anymore, then I think we have to look at the fact that our kids are coming into our classrooms with energy that comes from their intrinsic need to work in responsive information environments, their intrinsic need to communicate, to share their personal experience and identity, their intrinsic need to form and participate communities, their intrinsic need to ask questions, to accomplish things, to invest themselves, to safely make mistakes, and to earn audience and attention. There's enormous energy there that we can tap into. And I think we have to understand that we are also working in a brand new information landscape where information is increasingly networked, digital, overwhelming, participatory. It flows and unflows, connects and reconnects, and there are opportunities within this new information landscape. If we can learn to harness it, there are opportunities to create experiences for our students where they are working responsively, they are communicating, they're sharing personal experience, and they're doing all of these things within the context of the world that they're learning about, within the context of their curriculum. And I think perhaps the most important and profound condition that is converging on our classrooms is that for the first time in history we're preparing our children for a future that we cannot clearly describe, that we are preparing our kids for an unpredictable future. And facing that, I believe that the best thing that we can be teaching our children today is how to teach themselves. I'm going to close by taking you to a face-to-face conference that I spoke at last week in Pennsylvania, where I introduced the audience to a blog called We Are Not Afraid. After the London bombings, the blog is called We Are Not Afraid. And he configured that blog so that anybody could publish to it. Anybody could add an article. And he sent announcements out on the internet asking people to come to his blog and publish. But what he asked for were pictures. He said, I want pictures that say, we are not afraid. In the first 3 days, he got 2,500 pictures from people all over the world saying, we are not afraid. I want to show you just a few of the very first pictures that were published. We are not afraid. Notice there's the mirror, the frame of the mirror. There's his mobile phone. Took a lot of work to get that text to look that good in a mirror. We are not afraid from the Netherlands. We are not afraid. Too strong to be afraid. Nothing is stronger than love. We are not afraid from Germany. We are not afraid from Japan. We are not afraid. You can always tell when someone's taking a picture of themselves with a mobile phone because they've only got one arm. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. Y'all, when in history have people like you and I been able to whisper to the world something as powerful as we are not afraid? Thank you all very, very much. I'm sorry? That'll do it, right through the double doors. popular to compare our kids to us. Ah, shoot, battery's about dead. Encyclopedia, 1961. Oh, I'm not even wearing my thing.